It was a gruesome concept that my hand was decaying while still attached to my body.
What if you were seconds away from certain death, but somehow you survived?
My goals for the future are, well, one, to be an interpreter, and other goal is that...
These incredible stories of survival prove that even in the most impossible situations, the human spirit can prevail. From skydiving accidents to volcanic crashes, these 10 brave individuals defied the odds and lived to tell the tale. Their courage, resilience, and sheer luck changed their fates.
Here in the hollow of this giant tree, she observed bats for her doctoral thesis for more than a year.
Prepare to be amazed by the extraordinary feats of survival that will leave you questioning what's truly possible when faced with life's greatest challenges. Tammy Oldham Ashcraft, a fight for survival on the open sea. In September of 1983, Tammy Oldham Ashcraft and her fiancé, Richard Sharp, embarked on what they thought would be an ordinary sailing adventure. They were tasked with delivering a luxury yacht, Hazana, from Papatee Harbor in Tahiti to San Diego. What started as an exciting journey across the peaceful Pacific Ocean would soon turn into a fight for their lives, one they never expected. For the first 2 weeks, the couple sailed through calm waters, enjoying the serenity of the ocean. Richard, a skilled sailor, had plenty of experience with the sea, and Tammy was happy to be by his side. The journey felt like the perfect getaway, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. But on October 12th, everything changed. The calm was abruptly broken by Hurricane Raymond, a Category 4 storm that turned their peaceful adventure into a nightmare. The tragedy strikes. The storm unleashed ferocious winds and 40-foot waves that engulfed their boat. Richard acted quickly, sending Tammy below deck to safety, but the sheer violence of the storm capsized their yacht. Tammy was thrown violently across the deck by a brutal gust of wind, and she sustained a serious head injury. The blow knocked her unconscious, and she remained in that state for nearly 30 hours. When Tammy finally regained consciousness, she found herself alone. Richard was nowhere to be found, and the boat, barely afloat, seemed to be at the mercy of the relentless sea. With no land in sight and the terrible thought of losing her partner hanging over her, Tammy's fight for survival began. Fighting for survival. For 41 grueling days, Tammy was adrift in the open ocean. Her head wound still needed attention, but she had no means of treating it. Her isolation was absolute. No radio, no signals, and no sign of help. Yet, despite the mounting challenges and the crushing loneliness, she refused to give up. Driven by an unbreakable will to survive, Tammy found the strength to push forward. Finally, after what must have felt like an eternity, Tammy spotted land on the horizon. It was Hawaii, her first glimpse of solid ground in weeks, and the beacon of hope she had been waiting for. The sight of land marked the end of her harrowing ordeal, but it was also a testament to Tammy's incredible resilience and the power of human determination against the odds. A passenger whose name remains unknown survived a plane crash just moments after takeoff. The pilot tried to make an emergency landing in the sea next to the airport, but the engine caught fire. Miraculously, the crash caused minimal damage, though this passenger was badly burned. It's a strange kind of luck, surviving such a terrifying ordeal, but suffering at the same time. What do you think about these lucky survivors? Share your thoughts in the comments. Anna Elizabeth Johansson Bogenholm, a miracle of survival. Anna Johansson. Bogenholm never sought fame or recognition, but her incredible survival story would make her a symbol of resilience and hope. On the evening of May 20th, 1999, Anna and 2 of her colleagues embarked on what was meant to be a routine ski trip in the mountains outside Narvik, Norway. At the time, Anna was a 29-year-old orthopedic surgery student with years of experience on the slopes. Alongside her friends Marie Falkenberg and Tvin Neem, she chose a steep, familiar route down the mountain, unaware that this decision would soon spiral into a life-or-death battle. While skiing down, Anna lost control and fell headfirst onto a sheet of ice. Beneath the icy surface was a frozen stream. As Anna's body crashed onto the layer of ice, it cracked under her weight, and she plunged into the freezing water below. A day that began as just another winter adventure quickly turned into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. A fight against death. Anna's friends watched in horror as only her skis and feet remained visible above the ice. Desperate, they tried to pull her out, but Anna was stuck, wedged between rocks and the ice. Panic set in, and they immediately called for help. As time ticked by, Anna's situation grew increasingly dire. Her head and torso were submerged in freezing water, and the frigid temperatures caused her body to shut down. Hypothermia began to take hold, and within 40 minutes, Anna's body stopped moving. Her heart slowed, and her body temperature dropped to a life-threatening 13.7 degrees Celsius, the lowest ever recorded in a human who survived. At this point, Anna was clinically dead, but somehow, her body wasn't ready to surrender. A last-ditch effort. After what felt like an eternity, rescuers arrived, ready to fight for Anna's life. Armed with a pointed gardening shovel, they began to dig through the ice to reach her. By all accounts, Anna was lifeless. No pulse, no breath, just a cold, stiff body. The situation seemed hopeless, and it would have been easy for the rescuers to give up. But the medical team refused to let go. They worked quickly to warm Anna's body, using all the techniques at their disposal. Then, in a moment of pure amazement, Anna's heart began to beat again. It was a miraculous turn of events that defied all odds. The road to recovery. Though Anna had been brought back to life, her recovery was far from instantaneous. It took over a year for her to regain movement, as the extended exposure to freezing water had severely damaged her nerves. Yet, despite the challenges, Anna's story became a beacon of hope and perseverance. Her remarkable survival sparked further research into hypothermia and the extraordinary limits of the human body. Anna's journey is a powerful testament to the fact that, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, survival is always worth fighting for, even when it feels like there is no hope left. Victoria Cilliers, a shocking betrayal. On Easter Sunday in 2015, what should have been a fun and routine skydiving trip turned into a nightmare for Victoria Cilliers. A skilled and experienced skydiver, Victoria had taken to the skies countless times. This time, she hoped the jump in Wiltshire, England would help ease the strain in her troubled marriage. What she didn't know was that this jump would not only test her skills, but also her survival instincts, and force her to confront the unimaginable. Her husband, Emil Cilliers, had arranged the jump, or so she believed. Victoria soared through the sky, her parachute ready to deploy at 4,000 feet. But as she pulled the ripcord, nothing happened. She tried again, panic rising in her chest, but her parachute remained stubbornly packed. It was then that she reached for the backup chute, but to her horror, it too failed to deploy. Victoria was now plummeting toward the earth at a terrifying 60 miles per hour. It seemed like there was no hope. In what could only be described as a miracle, Victoria somehow survived the fall. She landed in a freshly plowed field, which cushioned her descent, sparing her from what would have been certain death. Though severely injured with broken bones and internal damage, Victoria defied the odds, clinging to life against all expectations. Uncovering the betrayal. As the days passed, what initially seemed like a tragic accident began to unravel into something far darker. The skydiving company, suspicious of the strange parachute failures, launched an investigation. What they discovered shocked everyone. Victoria's husband, Emil, had deliberately sabotaged her parachute. His goal was chilling. He had been drowning in debt and had planned to collect her life insurance payout by staging her death as a skydiving accident. The extent of Emil's treachery became even more sinister as Victoria recalled a disturbing event from a week earlier when he had tried to poison her with gas. In a strange twist, she had texted him, jokingly asking if he was trying to kill her. Little did she know, her words were closer to the truth than she ever imagined. The details of Emil's plot were exposed in a lengthy trial. Shocked and devastated by the betrayal of the person she loved, Victoria found herself battling not only for her life, but for justice. Emil was convicted of attempted murder in May 2018 and sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum of 18 years behind bars. Victoria, scarred both physically and emotionally, had not only survived the fall, but also the shocking betrayal of her own husband. Julian Köpke, surviving the Amazon jungle. What would it feel like to fall from the sky and land in the middle of one of the world's most dangerous jungles? For Julianne Koepke, this became her horrifying reality at the age of 17. Her survival against all odds would become one of the most incredible stories of resilience ever told. Born in 1974 to German parents, Julianne grew up in the heart of the Peruvian Amazon. Her father, Hans Wilhelm Koepke, was a respected zoologist, and her mother, Maria, dedicated her life to studying tropical birds. Together, they established a biological research station called Panguana. Julianne's childhood was far from ordinary. She was raised as a jungle child, surrounded by the wonders and dangers of the dense Amazon rainforest. This early exposure to the wild would later prove essential to her survival. The Flight of Fate. On December 24, 1971, Julianne and her mother boarded Lanza Flight 508 from Lima to Pucallpa, expecting a routine flight. However, the skies had other plans. As the plane flew through the stormy skies, Julianne sat near the back, enjoying a sandwich with her mother. The turbulence grew stronger, and suddenly, the plane was struck by a bolt of lightning. Everything happened in an instant. The plane disintegrated midair, and Julianne was no longer in her seat. Instead, she was plummeting toward the ground, falling from an altitude of 10,000 feet. The next thing Julianne knew, she was no longer in the cabin. She was falling, free-falling toward the jungle below, the ground rushing up to meet her. With no time to process the nightmare unfolding around her, she crash-landed in the thick Amazon rainforest, miraculously alive. A fight for survival. Incredibly, Julianne survived the fall, but not unscathed. She had a broken collarbone, a severe wound on her arm, and was missing one shoe. The pain was unbearable, but the real fight was just beginning. With no one around and no sign of her mother, Julianne was alone. Her father's lessons on survival echoed in her mind, particularly his advice to follow water downstream in order to find civilization. With the jungle surrounding her, Julianne made the difficult decision to start her journey alone. The rainforest was unforgiving, filled with dangers at every turn. Each night, the sounds of wild animals and insects echoed through the trees, and Julianne found herself gripped by fear. But despite the terror, she pressed on, using the survival skills she'd learned in her youth. After days of trekking through the dense jungle, Julianne stumbled upon a hut where 3 Peruvian loggers lived. At first they were frightened, believing she was some kind of water spirit, but they eventually allowed her to stay and recover. The rescue. The following day, the loggers took Julianne to a nearby hospital by boat, offering her a lifeline after 11 excruciating days alone in the jungle. She was treated for her injuries, and after much anticipation, she was reunited with her father. Unfortunately, Julianne learned that while her mother had survived the initial fall, she had succumbed to her injuries soon after. Julianne's strength and courage didn't stop there. She worked closely with authorities to help locate the wreckage of the plane, a difficult and somber task. Over the next few days, the bodies of the other 92 passengers were found, but Julianne Koepke remained the only survivor. Her story became a testament to the power of will, the sheer luck of survival, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Zaid Garcia, a story of resilience and hope. Zaid's story began in the most unimaginable way. At just 2.5 years old, a simple evening at home turned into a life-altering tragedy. What should have been a peaceful night quickly spiraled out of control when a candle set his bedding on fire. In an instant, Zaid was engulfed in flames, and the fire caused severe burns, covering 80% of his tiny body. Doctors, seeing the extent of the damage, believed his chances of survival were incredibly slim. They braced for the worst, but wasn't prepared to give up. Despite the severity of the burns and the dire prognosis, Zaid's will to live shone through. He underwent multiple surgeries, each one a battle for his survival. Through sheer strength and determination, he defied the odds and emerged from the hospital alive. However, life after the fire was anything but easy. Zaid lost both of his hands, his eyesight, and all the toes on his left foot, along with a toe on his right foot. Yet, his resilience remained unshaken. Overcoming stares and judgment. Growing up in the aftermath of such a traumatic event was no small feat. Zaid often found himself the target of stares and hurtful comments. As a child, hearing someone cruelly call him a zombie or monster was enough to make anyone question their worth. But through it all, Zaid's mother remained his unwavering support. She constantly reminded him that his true strength lay within and that he was not defined by the way others saw him. She encouraged him to embrace his identity, teaching him to find pride in who he was, despite the challenges. As he got older, Zaid channeled the pain and rejection he faced into something powerful. He became a beacon of hope for others who were also dealing with adversity. His life is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of self-acceptance. Zaid continues to show the world that no matter the obstacles we face, resilience, determination, and self-love can lead to a life full of purpose, strength, and hope. Aron Ralston, a solo adventure, gone wrong. On April 26, 2003, Aron Ralston embarked on a solo hike in Utah's remote and breathtaking canyon country. What should have been another adventure in nature quickly turned into an unimaginable test of human endurance. Aron, a seasoned climber and outdoor enthusiast, had no idea that this seemingly simple journey would change the course of his life forever. Aron was born in Ohio in 1975 and grew up in the mountain-filled state of Colorado. His love for the outdoors took root early, shaped by the towering Rocky Mountains surrounding his home. As a young man, Aron attended Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania, where he earned a degree in mechanical engineering. During the summers, he worked as a raft guide, exploring the outdoors further. After graduating, Aron joined Intel, working in various locations, including Arizona, Washington, and New Mexico. Yet his heart always yearned for the mountains. By 2002, he made a bold decision. He quit his corporate job and chose to pursue climbing full-time, embracing his true passion. Big dreams and a stubborn spirit. Aron was driven by ambitious goals. His dream was to climb all 59 of Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks during the winter, a daunting challenge that only the bravest attempted. Unafraid of danger, he pushed himself to the limits. But on one fateful day in April 2003, everything would change. That morning, Aron set off to hike Blue John Canyon in Utah, a narrow and secluded slot canyon. Confident and determined, he went alone, not telling anyone of his plans. While navigating a particularly tight section of the canyon, disaster struck. An enormous 800-pound boulder shifted and trapped his right arm against the canyon wall, pinning him in place. His fate was sealed. He was stuck, isolated, and with no way to call for help. 6 days of struggle. What followed was a grueling 6-day fight for survival. With limited food and water, Aron had no choice but to ration his supplies and drink from the natural sources available in the canyon. His attempts to dislodge the boulder were futile. He tried pulling, pushing, and leveraging anything he could to move it, but nothing worked. On the 4th day, he even attempted to amputate his arm using the tools he had on hand. But the process was slow, and the bone proved too tough to cut through. By the 6th day, the situation had grown even more desperate. His arm was decomposing and he knew time was running out. With no other choice, he gathered every ounce of strength he had left, using a pocket knife to break the bones in his forearm. The pain was unbearable, but Aron's determination to survive pushed him forward. Slowly, he amputated his own arm. Using camelback tubing as a makeshift tourniquet, he forced himself to climb out of the canyon with just one arm. A miraculous rescue. Just when all hope seemed lost, fate intervened. A family of hikers passed by and noticed Aron's desperate situation. They alerted the authorities, and a helicopter already nearby rushed to the scene. Less than 4 hours after Aron had amputated his arm, rescuers arrived to pull him from the canyon. At the hospital, Aron was in critical condition, having lost 25% of his blood and over 40 pounds. Aron's miraculous recovery stunned doctors and inspired people around the world. His story became a symbol of human perseverance, strength, and the will to survive. He wrote a memoir, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which later became the basis for the film 127 Hours. Today, Aron shares his survival story as a motivational speaker, continuing to inspire countless individuals with his unbreakable spirit. Hugh Glass, A Battle for Survival and Revenge. In the wild and unforgiving landscapes of the American frontier, Hugh Glass's tale of survival and revenge began with an encounter that no one could have predicted. As a frontiersman on a mission with the Ashley Fort Company expedition, Glass was on the hunt for supplies in the rugged wilderness of present-day Lemon, Wyoming. But while searching for the expedition, he stumbled upon a grizzly bear and her cubs. When the bear attacked, it was an all-out battle for survival. Glass suffered unimaginable injuries, a shattered leg, a torn scalp, a punctured throat, and deep bruises that seemed beyond repair. Most would have surrendered to fate, certain that death was imminent. The leaders of the expedition, seeing the extent of his injuries, thought Glass was beyond hope. They ordered 2 men, John Fitzgerald and Jim Bridger, to stay with him until he passed away. But the 2 men, believing Glass's chances were slim, saw an opportunity to save time. They stripped him of his rifle, knife, and fire-starting tools, then buried him in a shallow grave, leaving him for dead. A will to live. But Glass was not ready to die. Barely clinging to life, he managed to regain enough strength to drag himself from the grave. With nothing but his sheer determination and will to survive, he began a brutal, painful journey over 200 miles to Fort Cowa. His leg was broken, his body battered, but the thought of revenge burned brighter than the pain. He lived off whatever he could scrounge from the earth, berries, insects, and anything else that could keep him going. Each excruciating step was fueled by one singular, obsessive goal: to confront the men who had abandoned him to die. The shocking reunion. Weeks passed, and when Glass finally reached Fort Cowa, he was barely recognizable. His body had deteriorated, and he looked more like a walking corpse than a man. His first question upon arrival was chilling. "Where are my friends?" He wasn't seeking kindness. He wasn't there to forgive. He wanted the men who had betrayed him to answer for their actions. When Glass came face to face with Fitzgerald and Bridger, they were left stunned. They had thought him dead, but here he was, alive and filled with fury. The reunion was anything but a joyous one. The confrontation would forever haunt the men who had left him for dead. It wasn't just survival that Glass had achieved, it was a brutal, unforgiving reckoning with the men who had failed him. Nando Parado, a tale of survival against all odds. Nando Parado's survival story is nothing short of extraordinary, a tale of grit, determination, and human willpower that defies belief. In 1972, Nando, a 22-year-old college student and avid rugby player, was filled with excitement when his team, the Old Christians of Montevideo from Uruguay, was invited to a rugby match in Santiago, Chile. Eager for adventure, he invited his mother and sister to join him on the journey, but what should have been an unforgettable trip turned into a harrowing nightmare. On October 13th, disaster struck. The chartered plane carrying the team failed to clear a mountain peak in the Andes Mountains, and Nando's final memory before the crash was gazing out the window and seeing the mountain looming just below. Then, a violent blow to the head knocked him unconscious, and he would remain that way for several days. The aftermath. When Nando finally regained consciousness, he found himself trapped in the wreckage of the plane, which had shattered after crash landing in the Andes. The scene was horrific. Many passengers, including his own mother and sister, had perished either on impact or soon after. Nando, devastated yet determined, made a solemn vow to survive, for his father and for the hope of returning home. Stranded at an altitude of 8,000 feet in freezing temperatures, Nando and the other survivors were left without food or shelter. The temperature dropped to a bone-chilling 20 degrees below zero, and with no immediate rescue in sight, the survivors had to rely on their resourcefulness to stay alive. A harrowing decision. Days turned to weeks, and weeks into months. After enduring nearly 2 months in the mountains with little to sustain them, Nando, along with 2 other survivors, Roberto Canessa and Antonio Vicenten, realized they could no longer wait for help. They set out on a harrowing journey to find civilization, knowing that their chances of survival were slim. Their trek through the unforgiving mountains lasted a grueling 10 days. The journey was filled with fatigue, danger, and moments of hopelessness. Nando, exhausted beyond measure, once joked, "I was so tired that I thought of asking a snowman for directions." Yet, despite the physical and emotional toll, their resolve never wavered. The rescue. After days of trudging through the mountains, hope finally appeared. Nando and Roberto spotted a man on horseback across a river. They waved desperately for help, but the raging current drowned out their calls. Undeterred, they tied a knot around a rock and threw it across to the shepherd, who understood their plea. The next day, rescuers arrived, and 2 days later, emergency helicopters flew in to save the remaining survivors. In the end, 16 survivors made it out alive, just in time for Christmas. Nando Parrado's incredible journey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the unrelenting desire to survive against all odds. Today, Nando is not just a survivor, but a living symbol of hope, perseverance, and resilience. Ricky Meiji, surviving the Australian outback. Imagine being stranded in one of the most brutal and inhospitable places on Earth, the Australian outback. This vast, unforgiving wilderness spans over 70% of the continent and is home to some of the deadliest creatures on the planet. For Ricky McGee, this harsh environment became his battleground, testing his limits and pushing him to the edge of survival. In January of 2006, 35-year-old Ricky Meiji from Queensland set out on a journey to Port Hedland, Western Australia, for a job. Ricky was not a seasoned adventurer, just an ordinary man heading to see a friend before starting his work. Little did he know, fate had something entirely different planned. During his trip, Ricky picked up a couple of hitchhikers who claimed to have run out of fuel. Feeling generous, he offered them a ride, a decision that would change his life forever. About 20 minutes after accepting a drink from one of the hitchhikers, Ricky began to feel dizzy and disoriented. The world around him spun, and soon after, he lost consciousness. When he finally woke up, he found himself in the middle of nowhere, disoriented, half buried in the dirt, with no memory of how he got there. Had he been drugged? Was he robbed? Or was there something more sinister at play? Ricky had no answers, but one thing was clear: he was alone in the wild. Endurance beyond belief. Despite being alone in one of the most remote places on Earth, Ricky didn't panic. He knew the stakes. Surviving in the outback would require every ounce of strength and resourcefulness he had. Armed with little more than a broken lighter and his determination to live, Ricky got to work. He recalled the essential rule of survival in the outback: find food. With no tools, he resorted to eating whatever he could find: frogs, leeches, grasshoppers, anything that would keep him alive. As the days turned into weeks, Ricky's situation became even more desperate, but he refused to surrender. Through unimaginable hunger, thirst, and the scorching heat, he clung to life. For an unbelievable 71 days, Ricky managed to survive in the wilderness, each day pushing himself further than he ever thought possible. His will to survive was tested beyond belief, but Ricky's endurance was stronger than the outback's harsh conditions. Rescue and recovery. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Ricky's nightmare began to come to an end. A group of station workers found him, looking like a shadow of the man he once was, emaciated, covered in sores, and on the brink of death. He had lost nearly half of his body weight, dropping from 230 pounds to just 105 pounds. Despite everything, he was alive. Ricky's survival story became a sensation, captivating people around the world. After his rescue, he wrote a book titled Left for Dead in the Outback, detailing his harrowing experience. The outback had tried to take his life, but Ricky McGee defied all odds, proving that the human spirit is capable of surviving even the harshest of environments. His journey from the brink of death to recovery serves as a powerful reminder of the strength that lies within us all. Poon Lim, a survival story of creativity and resilience. Poon Lim's survival story is nothing short of extraordinary, a testament to the limits of human creativity, endurance, and sheer willpower in the face of insurmountable odds. Born in China in 1918, Lim spent his childhood in a small fishing village where he learned how to swim at an early age. At the age of 10, his family moved to Malaysia, where Lim continued working in the fishing industry. By 1942, at the age of 30, he joined the Chinese Merchant Marine as a steward on the SS Benmont, a British ship that transported supplies from Southeast Asia to Australia. However, on November 23, 1942, disaster struck. The ship was navigating the Atlantic when it was attacked by a German U-boat, sinking it almost instantly. Lim, who had never wanted to be on the ship in the first place, grabbed a life jacket and leapt into the frigid waters. With the ship now a sinking wreck beneath him, he found himself stranded in the middle of the ocean, alone, with no sign of land in sight and the constant threat of hungry sharks lurking nearby. Surviving the open sea. Despite being alone, Lim's resourcefulness would be his saving grace. He managed to find a wooden life raft that would become his lifeline. With no choice but to rely on his wits, Lim crafted a canopy out of the raft's material to protect himself from the scorching sun. Using his life jacket, he was able to collect rainwater, providing precious hydration during his endless ordeal. Fishing became a matter of life and death for Lim. He fashioned hooks from scraps of metal and used anything he could find as bait. His survival wasn't easy, though. He fought against seasickness, endured extreme temperatures, and faced the constant danger of sharks circling his raft. Resourceful as ever, Lim even caught seabirds that landed on his raft and used their blood to quench his thirst. A miraculous rescue. Poon Lim's resilience was tested like never before as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months. For a staggering 133 days, he battled the elements and the overwhelming isolation of the open sea. Despite unimaginable hardships, physical pain, hunger, and fear, Lim never lost hope. His body weakened, but his spirit remained unbroken. Finally, after months adrift in the vast ocean, hope arrived on April 5, 1943. Lim was spotted and rescued by a group of Brazilian fishermen, marking the end of his harrowing journey. His miraculous survival story spread worldwide, and he became a symbol of human determination and resilience. Poon Lim later published a survival manual, Survival in the Open Sea, where he shared his remarkable experience and the strategies that kept him alive. His story stands as a powerful reminder that, even in the most dire of circumstances, human creativity and perseverance can conquer the impossible. These incredible stories remind us that survival often comes down to sheer willpower and a twist of fate. No matter how dire the situation, hope can still shine through. The courage of these remarkable individuals proves that the impossible isn't always as far out of reach as it seems. Who knows what hidden strength lies within you when faced with the unthinkable? Let these stories inspire you to never give up, no matter how impossible things may seem.